Call the Lakeland Shore City Council meeting, May 3rd, 2018. Lakeland Shore City Council meeting to order. If you join me for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim, would you mind taking roll? Hi, Judy.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Councilmember Bishop.
Here.
Mayor Zeller.
Here. I'd make a motion that we adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion or any items we want to pull? Call for a vote. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is the consent agenda. There's two items on there. Item A is approved March 1st, 2018 council meeting minutes and approved monthly claims and financial reports. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Can I just say that it was a change? I just wanted to deny it. The net is 0,
Okay.
but Pixmer, I voided his check and did one for Angston.
Okay.
So there's different check numbers. I don't know. Do you want to?
We'll use that one for the record,
Okay.
but the change is noted.
Okay. Sounds good.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the modification.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call for a vote. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Item 3 is public comments. We have with us this evening Ms. Hanson from Inspect. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, Kim, I appreciate this opportunity to come before you tonight, just to do a little update and say hello. We'll start with the reports that I provided, which we're going to compare 17 with 16 and just say that you had a great year for building permit valuation in 2017. Even though the number of permits between the 2 years was, a small variation, 22 versus 24, why there was 1.385 million in permit valuation in 17 compared to 82,000 in 16. So, you probably know more about what that indicates, what kind of interest there is in improvements in your community. But I would just say that, anytime folks are investing in their properties, and I didn't mention, but of course these are all housing related and mostly single family housing and house additions, so that you have people that are investing in the community, and that's always a good sign. The other comparison that I have tonight is, of a short time span, but once again, showing that activity, you've got activity in this first quarter that you didn't have last year at the same time. When we send reports, they'll be comparing the same time frame so that you can see the growth. And again, all housing related.
Candace, can I interrupt you for a second?
I was going to ask for questions.
Are there any new projects that are already being reviewed in terms of, last year there were 2 effectively new homes. I see one was built as a renovation and one was a new home, both on the river. Do you know, are there any significant new large projects?
Do you mean projects that aren't reflected in this report?
New permits that would likely be issued?
I'll be honest and say I don't track that, but I'd be happy to let you know that in an email.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to know.
Right. And then if you would forward it to the others.
Yeah, if you send it to Kim, she can forward it on to the rest of us.
Okay.
But Kim, I'm not aware of any preliminary reviews that we've done.
There was a permit that came in for a new home.
Okay. I'm not aware of that.
Where's that?
I will have to look that up.
All right. Just curious.
Well, the long winter in the southern half of the metro has had a real impact, we've noticed. We have picked up some new business. Our business is growing, and we're in the northeast quadrant as well now. And so all the way up, in cities like Forest Lake and Isanti, and that's sort of a growth area for us. They have been busy for weeks already. I don't know if that means they had less snow and so people could get busy earlier or what, but
Bigger cities.
Bigger city.
and that is true. We also have clients in the, Dakota County area, and I just think that, there's impetus in larger cities. There's, we usually have some reasonably sized projects in Dakota County, and it's been really slow. So I think that where snow has differed, why it just has dampened some of the enthusiasm for getting started, possibly. Any other questions on the reports?
Yeah, I have one.
Sure.
I'm curious, where it says new single-family homes, the valuation is almost $800,000. How do they determine the valuation of the permit? I assume that's what this reflects.
The permit application has a space where the contractor submits their estimated value of the project. And then there's a formula applied to that. And so it's intended that the contractor tell the building inspector what the value is. We couldn't otherwise know.
But, John, my understanding is there are some standard costs per square foot that are generally applied to make sure that, the contractor is within the permitted range.
Right,
Okay.
they can't submit a value of what a fish house would be, that's gonna be a brand new house.
Right.
So we do cross-check that, and those figures are provided by the state.
And I didn't realize also, but like in a new home construction, it doesn't include everything down to the drapes and the carpet, and most of your non-structural or non-critical elements aren't included in the cost of a permit.
Things
Basi-
that would be governed by the building code would be.
Yeah.
I was just curious, because there's a couple fairly expensive, real expensive homes that have been built, I know, on our street in the last,
Couple of years.
certainly the last year. And they're both, one's just finishing up, I believe, and one is going to be finishing up. And they, I don't know what it costs to build them. I'm not even going to question whether these evaluations are correct, but I know that the assessed value would be a whole lot more than what this reflects.
Mhm.
Okay, so I was just curious. So.
And I would tend to guess they would be in the 2017 report.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then I just, as a courtesy, I provided this new article that I prepared just last week, in fact, and we get a lot of questions. There's a lot of surprise around building permits, and there are new people coming into the construction field all the time, but then in addition, there are a lot of property owners that are doing their own projects, which they get to do in some instances, and so this is almost kind of a nice checklist for you to have as decision makers to know what, because you could get approached by the public and say, they didn't know I had to have this, and so you have this. I took this straight out of the worksheets that we have, the handouts that we have. Sometimes they don't get to the point of submitting a permit and getting the handouts to know that they kind of how they get the cart ahead of the horse, so to speak. And so these are projects that are called for under the building code that do require permits, and I thought that this would be helpful for you to just simply know. The second half of the article about penalties, it's essentially, it's not called that, but it's essentially a double permit cost if they do not go through the permitting process. And so that's a big hit, and nobody really wants to put anybody through that, or anybody wants to pay for that. So it's just a better, there are opportunities to, as I've said before, glean any of this for your newsletter or mailings that you do, or handouts that you do if you want to carry a handful in your vehicle, so that you have something to hang your hat on. And if you have questions, you're always welcome to use my articles. You can take my name and my picture off and use it as your own, to whatever extent you want. It's meant to be a tool for you.
Great.
Okay?
One
So-
quick question.
Sure.
When I look at your spreadsheet here, I'm looking at it, and I see that there are permits noted, but no value with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that just okay? I replaced a water heater kind of thing,
Right.
or yeah?
Mechanical and over-the-counter permits are not, we don't track values.
Yeah.
Because they're, I don't know why the company doesn't, but I'll just tell you that we don't track the values for mechanical permits and over-the-counter permits. And I don't know if there's not a requirement for us to do that or what, and I would be happy to let you know why we don't do that. I can do that in this response.
No,
Okay.
I was assuming that it was something where I'm going to use the term. It was maintenance, a maintenance permit, and not a
Yeah. We'd like you to know how many permits are being issued.
correct.
Then there's this natural void that comes after it because there's not this permitting or the valuation requirement, and so I
Okay.
can see where you have that question. That's been raised before. Are there any questions? You know, I'm your conduit to the, you know, management to care that you, are happy, and we wanna make sure that if there are any issues out there that we're addressing them, so I'm happy to hear anything that you might have in your mind regarding our service, our performance, so hold back.
Do you normally think that, it's probably the obligation of the homeowner, but, you know, let's just say you were gonna replace your furnace or hot water heater. You know, you're hiring, in most cases, you're hiring a professional to do it, let's say, and it seems to me that I think a lot of homeowners just think that perhaps as part of the deal, you know, that the person, since they're in the business and it's their license that's somewhat at risk, I would assume, that they've gotten the permit. Is that something that happens fairly frequently, or is it?
I'd say that's true, because I'll be frank with you, I had a furnace put in my home a few years ago, and I didn't get a permit, because I didn't know I needed one, and the contractor didn't bring it up. And so those things happen. I think it's a naivete on the part of the homeowner, and I think that some contractors just don't wanna bother. It seems small, you know, compared to big projects, and so they just don't go to the trouble.
A lot of bids or estimates will say does not include permits, though. So I think a lot of contractors try to put the onus on the property owner, because it's, you know, time.
Yeah, right. So I create these articles to be educational pieces so that you can respond to those types of questions and be helpful in the event that, you know, somebody just goes awry and they don't intend to, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you very much. Enjoy spring.
Thanks, you
Long
too.
time for this.
We'll move on to item 4A here, consideration of bold planning, Washington County. Kim, do you mind introducing that?
I don't mind, Mayor and council members. The Washington County Board of Commissioners has approved an agreement with the Bold Planning to continue using their software. The grant dollars are still available, and the dollars allow cities to participate in this plan. There is no cost to the city to participate. There is a requirement of a 2-day training. The purpose of the program is to have everybody's disaster management plan on the cloud, in the cloud. And that's what it'll be utilized for. So the city would be responsible for the training and to update the information in the system. And again, there is no cost.
Yeah, even the
Okay.
training and the update is part of the grant, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, there truly is no cost to the city.
There's no out-of-pocket cost.
Okay.
The cost is staff time to
Okay.
update the system and input and go to the training.
Do you see that as being, I guess, are you recommending that we move in that direction, or are you feeling like the staff time could become an issue?
The initial staff time I don't see as an issue. I don't think there's any downside to participating.
Okay.
I've only known of two. There was one township and one city that has declined, and they've opted out. So the training will be attended, and I just don't see a downside. The benefit, quite honestly, is more to the county. It is their program. They did get the grant dollars, but they're going to have hands-on for
Right.
everybody's emergency plans.
It's an upstream issue more than anything else. And even our fire department is gonna benefit from the 5 cities having their stuff out there. Just, I brought this up, this came up at the last fire board meeting, and it was, that was the topic of conversation, is that Afton does something the one way and Lakeland does it another way, and if the fire department has access to it, well, they'll know. I got into a discussion after the meeting with the chief, and I was going, we don't have facilities in our town. We just don't have anything. And, there's not a big, we don't have a really big plan, other than if there's, and he brought up a couple things, which were valid. I mean, says, okay, if you have a tornado or a straight line winds and you've got damaged homes, and where are we going to set up as a city at that point to, deal with the people and help them out? And so, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I said, well, the fire hall, naturally. And so,
John, do you have any thoughts or feelings on it? I can support it. The little I know about it, it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
So I'd make a motion that we approve the bold planning agenda item 4A. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. John, I think the next 2 items are really yours.
I came about that the contracts that we had with Tri-County for both street sweeping and snow plowing services had come to an end towards the end of, the beginning of 2018, sometime around March, I believe. And so I took it upon myself to talk to Ben from Tri-County, the owner, and as to what he felt was the type of contract that he wished to enter into for the next 3 years. And he indicated that to me that it was just fine with him if we just renewed the existing contract for that time period through 2021 from 2018. And that would be like April of 2021. And so I went down and had him sign it before the last snowstorm, and brought it up here today to have the mayor sign it if in fact the city council approves it. So
Same terms and conditions as
same
before.
terms and conditions, same for snow plowing, $95 an hour, depending, it doesn't make any difference which vehicle they're in when they're plowing. And I think the street sweeping, which they only do once a year, is a $75 an hour thing.
John, did you happen to talk to him? I know a while back we had talked about, in the event we have another straight line storm come through, tree cleanup or anything of that nature. Is that something he's willing to help with?
He is, and it seemed like he's pretty laid back and pretty informal, and which is fine as long as he continues to live. And so he's got an hourly schedule, and I have to apologize. He didn't have it with him when I went to his home when I had him sign the contract, but he didn't have it with him, and I've kind of been after him since we had our last problem with straight line winds, not very often, but mentioning it on occasion. So I think what I'm going to do is if we approve the contracts tonight, I will make sure that they have a regular printout, I know, but I haven't seen it yet, of what it is per hour, or depending on the type of job they're doing. If it's cutting up trees with a chainsaw, they charge a certain amount per hour. And as long as the city council, as far as I'm concerned, is agreeable to having this be somewhat informal, at least the stuff that we don't know about that perhaps could happen in our community that would require their services, then as long as we know what the impact's going to be per hour, I think we ought to just assume that they're going to do it. And I will, and I've reminded him of that several times, and he says no problem. All I need is to figure out what it is that they actually charge per hour. If they're dealing with the same type of per hour thing that they do for street sweeping and snow plowing, which actually involves a piece of machinery as compared to maybe, chainsaw does as well, but and picking up larger trees.
So you'll get that detail, but the bottom
I will.
line is he's willing to
He's
provide
willing
the
to do
service.
it. Absolutely.
And we need that.
Yep.
Any thoughts or
Well,
comments?
yeah, I how do I say this? You know, the fire department has helped out to get two people they needed to get to in that situation. But once again, they can only go so far, or they will only do so much. And then we've got to deal with the Excel thing too. I mean, if there's lines down, nobody's going to touch them. So that's the only thing I'm thinking about as we were going through that.
Any thoughts on the plowing service or the street sweeping service?
Well, John and I had a discussion early this year, and that stub on Division, every year it doesn't get plowed the first time, and we both agreed that, oh, it's the new guy, and it's they just don't know that's a section of street there.
Right.
And I haven't had any problem, you know. I mean, they managed to come and plow in the end of my driveway just after I'm done shoveling, so that must mean they're doing a really good job. But no, I haven't had any, you know, I've been satisfied with what they've done.
Okay.
I think they do a pretty good job. Sometimes they, you know, don't get to it quite as fast. I mean, they're doing Afton as well as Lakeland.
Yep.
And I don't think that sometimes we're the first on the list, but I can tell you that I only had 3 complaints this winter. One was the last one we've all talked about here, and 2 were, one was another one of those stubs that come off of Quinlan that head east.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Right,
that
yeah.
somehow something happens there. Okay, it wasn't the same person. That's the most recent one. It was a woman that was rather irate, and then there was one other one, and I can't remember what that was. But those, I mean, those are 3 people out of the whole winter. So
And we had a
My
lot-
experience
we had a
is
lot
they
of snow.
always have the arteries open though,
Yep.
even though they may not have all of our work done. The
Yeah.
main arteries are opened.
as I like to remind all the constituents, I mean, basically all of us are within a quarter mile, except for maybe Brian and myself, of the
Main drag.
main drag, which are plowed by Washington County, and
Yeah.
we all have fairly good vehicles, so that unless we have a foot of snow, we can probably get there, you know. But I haven't heard anybody complain about the, you know, their, I mean, you always figure when spring comes, and I hate to even bring this up, but, you know, people's, the side of their yard gets a little bit nicked up by the
Oh, yeah.
snowplow and that type of stuff. And, they're fairly conscientious about not trying to do that, but, because when I asked him to do our road wider, he said, well, if it, if we do the grass, you know, I'm not gonna be responsible for it. And, so, I think in general, they do a good job, and I think it's fairly reasonably priced.
Yeah.
And, considering what it could cost, and, so I think, we should stick with them.
Was that a motion?
That is a motion to re-up with Tri-County for 2018 from April approximately to April of 2021 for both street sweeping contract as well as the snow plowing.
I'll second.
Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for doing that, John.
Mayor and council members, I will just note that the contract term is May.
Okay.
And, I had this question during the winter with a mailbox issue, and there is a clause in here, I guess for all of you to read regarding mailboxes. I didn't know. And now we know. I, of course, went to John.
And not to take too much credit, but I went down to see Megan and took the mailbox home and remounted it on the post for her, so problem taken care of.
Yes, he did take care of
was
it.
rather minor. It actually sticks out about 3 inches farther than the other 3 on the
Oh.
that are next to it, and they must have just, you know,
And it's got
nicked
a
it.
little hit me sign on
Right.
it too.
Well, and based on other communities' complaints, you do not get complaints. I didn't get any, so,
Knock on wood.
yeah.
John, this is a pretty good segue right into the road commissioner report.
Yeah, I wish Tim was here tonight, because I noticed in the minutes from the last meeting, that February meeting, which I was, March 1st meeting, which I was not at, he indicated that, that the suggested some cut and patches on various roadways, and I don't know what that actually I can envision what it means, because we may have had some of that done outside of Russell Hagen's place, perhaps, okay, if I think, if that's what it means.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to thank Tim for, I was out of town when the weight restrictions went on, and
Tom helped
I
too.
believe Tom And Tim,
I did
put
nothing.
the signs up despite the fact the hardware wasn't there, and,
I raided my junk
Junk
box.
box, and, the weight restriction went off as of April 30th, and I took the signs down, and they're sitting just where you found them before. I would like to talk to Tim, or you, Tom, as to, what we should or shouldn't be doing about patching or crack sealing or that type of thing, this year. And I don't think we have although right in front of our esteemed mayor's house is probably the worst spot. I don't believe we really have enough to do the spray emulsion type of stuff where they
Oh,
spray
okay.
the oil
Top
and,
coat kinda
and,
thing,
and
yeah.
do that. I mean, just for for the holes, okay? I can ask Tri-County to come back. They did a few for me, last month, just before we got the big snowstorm on Fourth Street.
Why don't we ask Parodi if any other community's doing that this year?
Okay.
If someone else is, if they're down in the valley, then they could come over.
Sure.
Piggyback.
Outside of that, I think that, from the little I understand of the issue, there's one way to do it. Otherwise, you're really just throwing
Right.
a Band-Aid on it, and you're going to do it every year.
I mean, I've noticed on my walks up along Quixote and Quinlan that they went out. Tri-County went out. This is in Lakeland. And they went out and patched the holes, and then we got the next snowfall. Well, when they ran their blade,
Yeah, they're all
blade
gone.
over it, they're
Yeah,
all
it's a
gone.
waste.
They're right back. That type of thing. So, it's not their fault. Okay, it's just that they didn't have time enough to get packed in and everything else. And there's a few holes that I may just patch myself. There's some on Second Street North, right by the mailbox there, that have been there a couple of years, and I just feel like we ought to do it. But beyond that,
I was looking at the one on Quinlan up
right
next
there
to
by
mine,
Tim's,
yeah.
yeah,
And it's,
getting deeper.
You guys have to fix that. You've been talking about it for the last 12 months.
well, we
Just
need a guy
go,
with a Jeep to come
just
down.
go
And
plug the
anyway,
hole, will ya?
It
Can't
is,
talk about
it is
that
plugged,
pothole
but
anymore.
it keeps it keeps getting bigger. The diameter of it it's starting to crack out. It's just I mean
Something.
that
Sinkhole.
thing started, as the size of a coffee can, and it just keeps. The
So-
patch is fine.
So will you touch base with John, and then maybe get some feedback from Tim, and use your best judgment like you always do, and
Right, yeah.
Take care of it.
Eventually, and not that I haven't said this before, we're gonna have to do something about Fourth Street South, okay, right there by the tennis courts.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's getting, you can keep filling the potholes, but they reappear every year.
right.
And
As you
it's
go up the hill there, it
yeah,
gets
as
pretty
you go up
choppy.
the hill, it's
Yeah.
getting pretty bad, but
No
Beyond-
significant street project plan for this year?
no.
Okay. So then maybe the answer is, John, that we look at, if we're not doing a major street project, maybe we do look at if there's some general maintenance that needs to be done.
Well, Tri-County doesn't do any general maintenance except for hot patching, okay? So they don't do spray emulsion, they don't do crack sealing, that type of stuff. So it's got, unless you're just gonna fill it with,
No, I'm
No.
suggesting that
Okay.
if we're gonna,
spend the money.
that we bring somebody in that's what they do, and
Okay.
get those holes filled. At least get an estimate.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Yep.
Okay. Kim?
Mayor and council members, your comprehensive plan has officially been sent out to all the required interested parties with a cover letter, and therefore the comment period of 6 months officially started May 1st. There was one agency that cannot review until the stormwater management plan is completed, and one agency, the federal agency, National Park Service, I'm having a hard time struggling with finding contact info.
Frankly, I don't even know that they need to review our plan. They don't have any jurisdiction south of Stillwater Bridge. I was surprised to see them on the distribution list.
What
So-
I did was go to the Met Council, and they've got a very good outline on there of who each community's plans need to be sent to, and it was listed.
Yeah, I was surprised by that one. Okay.
The July meeting, I guess I would like some direction on. It is the 4th of July week, and I believe the 4th of July is a Wednesday. You're meeting Monday the fifth, which if that's when you want it, that's fine, but I know last year you did change it. And
I-
you don't have to decide now.
I would say if we end up having a meeting, that we should probably change it. That's not gonna be a good week for anyone.
But we would have obviously a June meeting.
For sure. Hopefully we have an application to process. We've kinda had one that's been in the works for quite some time, so I think we'll have I think we'll definitely have a June meeting.
And you will have a liquor license renewal before you in June, so.
So we definitely have a June meeting. So maybe we don't have a July, but let's tentatively schedule it for the following
The
Thursday.
12th?
Yeah, but would you coordinate with staff here to make sure that the hall's available? And we'll just have that as a tentative. Does that make sense, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a couple more things. I just really would like to commend the 3 council people that went out and helped with the plowing in the blizzard with the resident that was unable to get out. That was really nice of you guys.
Let's be very specific about who that was. That was John, it was Randy, and
Mr.
Yes.
Wilson.
Mr. Wilson. So I
Well,
don't
now
want
at
any
this point-
confusion that I don't want to take credit for
I'm
it.
glad I brought my cement pump with, though,
Yeah.
because that's what it was like blowing snow
And
over
now
there.
that you've mentioned them, it was within an hour, those guys were out there. So, again, I think just, that was really, really nice.
Yeah.
4 complaints have come in the last, I would say 2 months since our last meeting that appeared to be valid zoning complaints and letters have been sent out. A couple of those issues have been resolved and taken care of.
Great. Thank you.
That's all I have.
City Treasurer report.
Okay.
Welcome. Do you mind
Oh, no.
just approaching the podium so that you have a microphone is really the primary reason.
Mayor and council members, I was on the website just, a couple days ago, and I was looking and I'm seeing we have no financial statements on there. So I will work with you, Kim. Is that who I need to work with to?
If you send them to her, she can put them on there.
You can put them on, because there isn't anything on there since September for financial.
I don't know what you put on. The bill lists are all there. That's what I've put on.
Okay. it
We'll
says
have to
that-
take a look at
Okay,
it.
yep, we'll take a look at that, but because they stopped in September.
'Kay.
From what I've seen, so, okay.
We'll get it
Um,
figured out.
Yeah, and then, let's see, some developer accounts, have we gotten that check in yet, do you know from, we haven't gotten any checks in, because we did send out that invoice to 125 Lakeland Shores for over $4,000 and haven't seen anything on that yet.
Okay.
I don't know if I need to do anything more or just leave it go there.
When did it go out?
That was probably, March. I think it was in March.
I would say if we don't have it.
March 25th,
Oh yeah, it's
still, so 4,387.
yeah. I would say if we don't have it by next month, then we need to send another notice.
Okay, all right.
Is it, do we know what it's for?
Probably related to expenses that we incurred processing
Yeah.
their application.
That
So we're
is
looking for
All the
reimbursement.
variants.
Yeah. Yep. So I'd say if we don't have it, send it next month.
Okay, and, we received escrow for Lynn Properties for 7th Street vacation, $500. Is that the same as the 2nd Avenue Street or 2nd Street, or do you guys know?
Yes, I think that's the same
It
applicant.
is the same,
Mhm.
okay, so,
That's the application we're anticipating next month.
Right
okay,
next to Roby's.
so we've got some expenses for that, more expenses, we've already had.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
okay. All right, and then, I just wanted to mention, we had that $500 sitting here from the Caldweller.
From the what?
What is it? It's 44 quality, let's see. Um, 424 Quinlan. And, they a long time ago had put up some permits. This is really from 2012. And I'm just wondering if I can refund that escrow. They had 5,000 for water hookup, 5,000 for road escrow, and a 500 grading deposit. And it looks like we just have the 500 grading deposit yet, and that has never been refunded since 2012. So I don't know if
I would say if we haven't incurred any offsetting costs that we should, I'm just trying to think of who could confirm we haven't received any offsetting costs. That would go back to 2012. Maybe a quick email to John Perotti, but if the answer is no, then I would say we need to refund it. We've held it long enough.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yep,
So John Brody,
yes.
okay. All right, do you wanna do that, Kim, or do you want me to?
Coordinate it with Kim,
Yes.
please.
All right, and, okay, then the other thing is, I have been, let's see. You know, I was, also looking at the website and for forum funds, and we're sitting with about $380,000 in the road fund.
Mhm.
And there's some other options that we could do, you know, maybe to get a little more interest, if anybody's interested in that. Just to let you know, the March 4M Plus Fund was paying 1.36 interest. The, April is 1.53% interest. Now, that pretty much says, you know, we can take it out whatever we want. I think the plus, you have to leave it in 11 days or something like that, but we're already past the max on that. They have some other options where you can do series funds, and they're invested the exact same way. The only thing is they limit the term and the length. So if you're looking at, you can invest it out 4 months and get like 1.88%, or you could go out 6 months and get 2%. 11 months is 2.14%. But, you know, I don't know if that money's sitting there. and
Will
I
you
don't
make
know-
a note, I think when we have our budget workshop this year,
Okay.
we'll have let's have that as an item that we review. I think it makes sense to do that. We just need
Yeah.
to make sure that in our long-term capital expenditure plan that we're not committing money that we know we're gonna need.
Yeah,
But
and
I
we're
would say if
talking
we can do a
4
little bit better, we should try to do that.
Yeah, they have a plan that you have to invest in by, May 10th.
Hmm.
And you can put as much as you want, as much in it. And, in 6 months, we could have 2%. Now, I don't know about if rates are going up. I mean, it looks like they went up, you know, 0.10% from, in the Foreign Plus in just a month. So they may be, but you just wanna wait till that time.
That's my sense. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what it means. I think the rates are going up. There's no question about that. And so I'm not sure when you're thinking we were going to have this budget meeting and how much we need to hold back, you know, so that we can have access to it. But
Right.
you know, we haven't got any beyond. I assume since it's designated for road projects, we're not allowed to use it for anything else. So
Right.
you know, it just seems to me that since we haven't got anything coming up right away, that, you know, if we invested 200,000 or 300,000 of it, you know, that it would make sense to kind of do it as soon as possible.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm sitting here and going, you know, all we have to do is figure out that the money should be able to be transferred out like every April or May or whenever we're gonna, you know, do that. And or when the possibility comes up. And I don't have a problem with, we did the same thing at the fire department. We moved some money in our equipment funds, because those are like 9-year loops on those. And so we've been, you know, road repair, what you're gonna do that year is not predictable, but when you're gonna do it is pretty predictable.
Basically, it explains too that it's the same as the 4M Plus fund that we're already in.
Okay.
We
So
invest in
what's
same
the
stuff.
what's the total fund balance right now?
In the street, we have 380. I just moved 50,000 from the 4M fund to the 4M Plus, so that's tied up a little bit, but we're sitting with 323,000.
John, what was your motion?
My motion would be to, and this is something we can get back within, I mean, not get back, but you can get access to within 6 months?
Yeah, the 4 months is 1.88, and the 6 months is 2%.
Well, I think we ought to do and there's no risk here?
Nope, it's the same as the,
Yeah.
Then I
You know,
think
it's
we,
all
I
through
think
the
we ought to
fee.
do 300,000 at 2% for 6 months.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Maybe in the future, if you would send out an email in advance.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a relatively easy decision, but,
Right,
you know, to have information to be able to review it in advance,
yeah.
or if we need to have a 15, 20-minute workshop prior to a meeting, to
'Cause I
kind of,
just- I
to
just
handle
thought of this
things.
afternoon, and I'm like, boy, you know, I hate to leave that money sitting there,
Right.
and since I was coming today.
Yep.
But I understand.
No, it's just fine. But in the future, if we'd have a little bit more time to review.
Right, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, and then, let's see. Oh, and I just wanted to mention, you know, we did get this note from the Youth Service Bureau, and they were requesting a donation of $500, and it doesn't look like we've done that in the past. I'm not sure, I just don't wanna assume that we don't, or whatever, but,
We have done it in the past.
I don't know in that amount, though.
No, I don't think it was that amount.
I think it was more like 200 or 250 or whatever was in the charitable gambling fund or something.
Yeah.
Well, so let me touch on this for a minute, because I'm actually their newest board member. But through my years of involvement at Lakeland, Lakeland made a policy a number of years ago that we were no longer making donations to charitable foundations, because it was taxpayer money. And at that time, I shared that comment with Sheriff Bill Hutton. And Sheriff Hutton was serving on their board at the time, and Pete Orpit just recently was serving on their board. Brent is on their board now. Long story short, they changed their formula, and it's a contract for services now, and they can provide us the statistics of how many youth in our community are served, and we just ironically made the appeal to Lakeland last month because there was some resistance that, you know, they were going to stop making this contribution or this contract for services. And the number that sticks in my mind is there were 73 youth that were serviced in Lakeland last year, and that on average, and I'm going to get this wrong, someone will receive 7 visits or 7 consultations. So when you do the math, you know, it's about $15 per meeting with a counselor to help them with their troubles. So I feel strongly about it. My only concern would be, how does it tie out to the formula? And we can certainly ask their director for that. But I think it's a tremendous value, and it's, when I have law enforcement tell me and the county attorney tell me that it's a hell of a value, I don't need much more than that. Now that I'm on the board, I feel even more strongly about it, frankly.
And I couldn't agree more. In my experience, I've spent years in juvenile court as a public defender, and I can say it wasn't in this county, but it was in Ramsey County. And anything you could do to keep people out of the criminal justice system is something that is a plus, not only for the community, but also for the individual involved, family. And so, whatever we call it, I realize that we've had this discussion before. I think that we don't want to be the ones to decide which people which groups we're going to give money to. I think this one, the way they've worded it, which is a contract for services, it makes a lot of sense. And if we wanted to just give them the 500, it would be fine with me. But I'm sometimes somewhat casual with money if we have to tie it to the actual number of people that have been helped in our own community. But you know, we're one big, you know, when I think of community, I think of it a little bit larger than just Lakeland Shores. And you know, if the kids in Lakeland aren't gonna, if they're having trouble behaving themselves, aren't necessarily going to restrict themselves to you know, the
Their
streets.
geographic boundaries.
Right. Yeah. So you know, in some ways, I just feel that
We're all in it together.
we're all in it together, at least as the 5 cities here along the river. And so
Well, that number, that 73, that's like a little over 4% of Lakeland's population. That you know, I don't want to say that surprises me, but that's an impactful number. I mean,
Well, and they provide a number of services. I mean, it's crisis prevention, crisis response. It's drug and alcohol. I mean, it's very significant.
when I coached hockey, I had a couple players that were working with those guys.
They have a presence in the schools.
Yeah.
So Well, how would you like to proceed on that? I'm comfortable with the 500, but frankly, I'd like it to tie to something. I mean, I'd like to be assured that they're using the same formula for our community that they're using for every other community. So, if we could, I guess I'm comfortable approving up to $500, but I would just like to see how that was calculated and to be assured that it's consistent with the calculation used for the other communities.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll second it.
Oh, okay, I'm done then. I guess I just vote no.
We'll call for a vote then. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Carries.
So do we wanna find,
I'll work with Kim to coordinate with their director.
okay,
We'll get that information.
okay, so then I'll just go ahead and process the check, or do you want me to wait till for the next?
Wait till we confirm.
Next.
No, you can just wait till you get an email, then go ahead and cut the check.
Perfect, okay. And then I'll have it for next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the only other thing I have is, about, for the budget, when you would wanna start, getting ready, if you have any direction.
I'd say July.
So for July,
Yeah, and
That's
I
something
prefer to
else.
do those in a workshop.
okay,
Now, if we're not having a July meeting, we could do it in August. We could have an August workshop, maybe 30 minutes.
okay,
We don't have that many moving pieces in our budget, but, by then you may know what some of the variable expenses will be.
okay,
But I think if we could have a 30-minute discussion prior to our August meeting, that gives us plenty of time.
okay,
Does that make sense for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the fire department budget will be approved next week, and so that's one of the moving targets.
Yep.
That'll be done, so.
WMO,
yeah,
police, fire. Does that make sense, Ron?
It does.
Okay.
sounds good. And then just about the direct deposit, I just wanna let you know, I still haven't gotten a chance to work on the nacho file. $30 is what it is if we wanna go ahead with direct deposit,
That's 30 a month though, right?
30 a month.
That's
Yeah.
$360 a year to effectively process 4 checks. That seems high to me.
That's what it is to get it set up, the bank charge.
Can you guys deal with a good old-fashioned check?
I certainly can.
Yeah, I know, I still remember to flip them over and sign them, so.
All right.
You know what, I took a picture of mine and I can send it off to the bank.
Well, slow down.
Ah, wait a minute.
That's really nice.
Getting ahead of us.
Right, one thing at a time here. All right, thank you for coming in this evening.
Yep.
Thanks for doing a good job.
Yeah, the transition's been very smooth. Do you need signatures?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
And you guys have checks in there.
great. Would you like to start with your report?
Oh, sure. Two things. One of them was a bit of a hiccup we had with recycling a couple months ago when the contract with Highland came into play. I spent a good amount of time on the phone with Highland and with the county trying to get some things sorted out. They did not want to supply additional bins to a residence. And that was, I grabbed the contract when I was talking to Highland and was blasting through it, and I did find the section that said that there is no charge for additional bins. Obviously, Highland didn't read the contract very closely, but then we got into a few other things, and they can't charge for additional carts. They have to supply additional carts, and it's to the charge is resident, based on the residents. So residents gets a specific charge, not the number of carts or bins, whatever you want to call it. So we worked that through. I haven't gotten back to oh God, I think of his last name now. His first name's Tom. He was the guy, the Mac Tool guy that brought it up. And I said, here's the deal. They are required by contract, if you put boxes next to your bin, they have to get out, pick them up, and throw them in. And he said, well, that isn't going to be very much fun for him. I said, no, that additional bin's going to sound like a pretty good idea after a couple months of that. And so I've got to call into Sue today, and I wanted to see if she had any more feedback on it, because we had in this process, we found out that Highland hadn't signed a contract yet. And so.
I have to say though that, you know, if somebody's running a business out of their home that produces a lot of material,
Right,
you know, I mean, I think an endless supply of bins isn't really equitable or fair to everyone. If we're just talking about one extra bin and we're done with the problem, I can live with it, but, I mean,
yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, you and I had the conversation back then,
yeah.
and I understand what you're saying, and
The greater good is that it ends up being recycled.
yeah,
And again, if we're talking about one bin, fine,
Yeah.
let's make it go away, but if it's excessive, then I
Yeah.
think we have to review it.
we had, yeah, he used to have 4 when it was every other
Oh,
week.
that's a
And,
lot.
Moroni was fine with that. They didn't care. Now Highland had balked a little bit, and I believe we got. That's why I wanted to talk to Sue. I wanted to make sure that she had gotten that straightened out, but because she's a little bit bigger hammer than I am, dealing with. She works with the county, and she's a bigger hammer than I am. So
Otherwise, I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I think it's worked out well. The rollout was fairly smooth.
Remarkably so, I think. You know.
Yeah.
there were. I was building pitfalls in my own mind that never came to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it went really well. They did a good job. The fire department, like I said, the budget's going to be approved this month, next week, and I think it's 4.8 was the increase, and that all basically comes down to personnel costs. There are a few other items that have gone up a little bit. Gas is creeping up on us again, and I have to spitball gas because I'm looking at 2019 trying to figure out what our gas costs are. I can get 18 months worth of gas or oil futures, but that's about it. And so anyway, but I think we're going to be looking at this. Personnel costs are going to become a topic of discussion over the next few years because our 2 daytime EMTs are within several years of not being with us anymore. They're going to retire and move on, and I don't know how we're going to make up that staff because there aren't daytime people out here to make runs. So they talked about part-time people and a number of other things, but we got 2 years to think about it or work on it, try to come up with something. So, but like I said, it's going to be a staffing issue, and it's going to be a staffing cost in the future. So everybody's got a heads up now.
Okay.
Yeah, but other than that, I don't have anything.
Great. John?
One thing on the recycling thing, I did speak to Moroni's, the young man that was picking up a barrel on our street, and he said all you have to do, because there are, I know, numerous ones that people were gone for the winter,
Right.
that type of stuff. All you have to do is call them. They send out the kid with the pickup truck, and he picks them up, and it's taken care of. So it's not
Case by case kind of basis.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep. And one of the things that I've been concerned about dealing with the rollout of that particular recycling was the fact that we didn't really have. It was a little confusing, I thought, because we didn't have any way of contacting the citizens to tell them. I mean, they received the Highland barrel, which had the very nice explanation attached to it, that type of stuff. But there was a little confusion as to, necessarily, I thought, when it was going to start, or, I mean, this is minor, Tom. I just thought that there could have been a few odds and ends that were cleaned up by if we could have just somehow gotten a message out to each home. Okay.
Oh, I don't disagree with you one bit. Matter of fact, that was a conversation I had with the other communities, and the fact that one of them for sure was doing a mailing.
He's setting you up.
I know he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, everything went fairly smoothly, but we didn't get any complaints.
Yeah.
So, despite that, we've got great constituents. But I would like to think, and maybe you, Tom, with your expertise and things that are technology, that type of stuff, I would like to think of some way we could notify each household by email, okay, of you know, not very often, maybe a half a dozen times a
Yeah.
year, when something comes up that we think's important. And one of the things I think is important that's coming up, we can ask them, yes, to go look at the website,
Yeah.
okay, which probably needs some work, but we can do that for their information. But when I look at it, I see that 5 people have been there before me, and it's the end of the month,
Right.
that type of thing. So, I would like to think that if we could just, like with the election coming up, you know, it would be nice to send out something, not send it out, but an email form, you know, where it says there's a mayor's position and 2 council seats that are coming up, and then the follow-up to who actually applied for those, okay? And I don't know how else we're gonna do it.
Well, see, everything you're talking about right now, whether it's email or snail mail, doesn't make any difference, requires an address.
Right.
Whether it's an email or a 167 whatever, you know, I mean,
Gotcha.
and as I have learned over the time, there's an informational function in Code Red, which I'm very leery about getting into, because I don't want to, how shall I say this, I don't want to reduce its impact when it's something serious. And so that was what that's kind of what we were talking about in the meetings, was the fact that they had a mailing list that they could put things together.
And I will note, Mayor and council members, Highland did a direct mailing to every household.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the bins. They did a direct mailing.
I think though, to John's, he's shared this with me when we ran into each other, and this is what I came up with. Let me know if you think it's a solution. We could go door to door and cover the city in, you know, a matter of hours, but inevitably then someone has to come back and enter whatever email addresses or contact info we got. Inevitably some mistakes will be made. I'm wondering if we don't do a door knock with a postcard that says, please go to our website, click on the link, sign up to be on our distribution list. If that isn't a way to kind of automate it and bring people's attention to the website and to the ability to be on our distribution list. That was my
I will note
idea.
there are legalities with that, and data practices, privacy, and I think people have to sign a Tennessean warning. There are issues with that.
But we should have a way, I mean, we can get the email or the mailing address is easy enough, but something more instant. And to John's point, we should probably be taking a look at our website to make sure we're current, and if there's something we need to do to freshen that up. But it'd be good to have a means to communicate more instantly with people.
I will say that that is an issue. Communicating with your residents is an issue for every city, and it does not matter what size. It's very difficult to get the word out. You know, things like elections, there are public notices, it's in the newspaper, there's a lot of advertisement about it, and clearly there are, you could try as hard as you can, and there are still people that are gonna be missed and get very upset.
But if we got to 80%, that would be probably a significant improvement, and I'm guessing we could do even better than that. And John, to your point, come election time, because we have a high voter turnout, we could also be handing out, you know, link information at the polls.
The ballot, yeah. Yeah, I do agree with Kim though that we're going to be stepping on some privacy issues, and there's going to be a need to be, if we do hand something out, there's probably going to be a disclaimer we're going to have to put on.
No, my idea is that they voluntarily sign up to be on our list. We don't share that list or sell that list.
No, I agree.
So I don't know that we're getting into any privacy issues. If someone reached out to us and said, could you promote my business with your list, our answer would be no.
I believe those emails are public.
It'd
It
be,
has been years since I've dealt with
it'd be
this
fine
issue.
that our blast email is public to all of our residents. I'm just saying the resident information that's shared with us would be private.
Oh, no, I am specifically saying just the email.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever we send out, I would expect that to be public info. Yeah. Would you mind looking at our link and what our distribution list looks like now?
Sure.
And then, I mean, to print up handouts and to divide the city and conquer, we could do that in, if we can do a driveway in 30 minutes, we ought to be able to do a mailing list in 2 hours. But I agree. I think it's an important issue.
One other thing, and then another thing is, I believe that this Saturday is Lakeland's cleanup day over here at the church, I assume. And I don't know, does that still include us, since we
No.
don't seem to, it does not, so
No,
if
it
you're
does
from
not.
Lakeland.
We are now with Same Race Point and Lake St. Croix Beach,
Okay.
and we will have a separate cleanup day.
Okay, that'll be interesting when people show up there. Okay, I was just
Oh,
curious.
and the brush days have changed.
Oh, have they?
Yes, the brush days have changed to the third Saturday of the month.
I don't even know that it's that consistent.
It is. I looked at it. I happened
Jim
to get.
Stanton reported on it at Lakeland, and it was not that predictable. There's a couple dates that are off from that. So we have specific dates. Let's get you
Yeah.
specific dates.
I have those. I got Lakeland's
Will
flyer.
you send it to Kim?
I can send it to Kim, yeah. Matter of fact, I put it on my calendar already, so.
Brush dates? did
Oh,
you say?
okay. The
We'll tell you.
Sandstone, site, we can haul our brush up there for free and get rid of it, and
Happens once a month, okay. And it used to be the first Saturday of the month, which was easy, and now it's changed.
it was, first one was April 28th. That, I think, was the odd one.
Could be.
When's the May one, just for my,
Oh, I didn't put them in my calendar. I'll send them to you.
Anything else, John?
no, I believe that's it. I just, I think with this email thing, just one last thing, we don't have any newsletters anymore. They were, to me, kind of a waste of time and effort. They didn't have a whole lot of information. It was one way of communicating, but, that's the other option, going back to having a, 4-season, mailing. Quarterly
Yeah.
type of deal, but, that means that Kim's gonna have to put something together with our help, obviously, in order to do it. Apparently, we have the software, if that's what it's called, in order to do it, cause Sandy was doing it on a regular basis. But that's another alternative, but we're not doing it now. I don't particularly care to do it, but, if we can come up with a different way of communicating with people.
Well, most of those images that you do and that kind of thing are things you could send in an email too. If, there was something that came up that you wanted to publish, a two-sided white paper kind of thing, that you could do that in an email too.
Other than that, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have
We'll do
anything.
that one.
I don't have anything to report. We had WMO. We had a training seminar hosted by the St. Croix River Association. More follow-up to the information packet that they'd assembled. So beyond that, I don't have anything. We've had the sheriff's report in our packet.
Mhm.
I didn't see anything unusual there. Nothing additional on fire department?
Nope.
I was just curious on one thing.
Pancake breakfast is this Sunday for anybody who wants to come down.
Okay.
And one other thing, when I was going through what our expenditures were for the month, it looked like the engineering firm had received I was curious as to what they had done. We're not doing anything with roads that I'm aware of, so I assume it has something to do with either the permits that are out there, including mine.
Judy has the
Rep.
detail for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's share that with John offline.
Okay, it'd be fine.
Yeah. If you do have it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can review that. Yeah. All right, that's it. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.